Holy moly, guaca, Halloween moly. This little book is a real time machine. This brings me back to a time which was full of dust, can't even speak. A time full of really, really hard work, which was like a never-ending story somehow. It brings me back to working under really, really difficult circumstances. It's absolutely crazy, but all of that has nothing to do with the book itself, but with the situation I had when I created this book. Because I created this back in 2024 during my move from Austria back to Germany. And I remember working on this book like it was yesterday. When I did this, I had to work on the dining room table of my landlord. It was pretty nerve-wracking for both of us. Well, for me, because I couldn't find my craft supplies in all of my boxes. Please think of this situation like, a dining table, a chair. On a dining table, you have not so much space. That is not the problem, because this book is also not very big, and I can handle tiny spaces, but all of my craft supplies have been in boxes around me in his living room and, even in his studio where he had to make music and had to do his live streams and so on. It was such a crazy time, but I could manage to make this. And since I made this book, you keep asking how I made these little creatures in this book. All of these, nearly all of the creatures here are also some other people, but I'm talking about these little creatures here. These are made all in the same way with the same components, and you have been asking me since I have shown this book how I made these and which components I have used. So I thought today is the perfect day to show you that and to create some of these together. So happy Halloween and welcome back to another video of Vaultober 2025, where I take some older ideas from the Heinzel Vault, like for example this, and give them a new twist. Today it's like a little special video because I will nearly recreate this like you can see it here, but I want to focus on something, and I think that is in the most cases the reality for all of us when we watch YouTube videos and when we look at what people create in those videos, and that's what can I do if I don't have the same materials like the person in the video has. A quick little note, this was an ideology make for Tim Holtz, so that means this book is full of ideology pieces. I will use some ideology pieces today as well, but I also want to show you what you could use if you don't have the ideology items. I'm facing the same problem like you might face, because these portraits here, I don't have them anymore. These came originally, if I'm not mistaken. No, I am mistaken. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I have the wrong sticker book here. This is the one from 2023. So I will be back in a second. Let me quickly take a look at my drawer because this is the wrong book. I'm so sorry. I had this here from the other video and I was convinced that that is the correct thing, but it isn't. So let's see. I have absolutely no idea if I have some of that left. Yeah, this should be from that thing. When we got the ideology items, I think we got the prototypes and this wasn't even bound. I can't remember. Yeah, here, look. I think here, this should be the rest. But it's pretty similar to what you've just seen. No, this is the Christmas one, where you can clearly tell that seeing this. Is it really possible that I have used all of this stuff from that sticker book up? Yeah, it must be like that, because otherwise it would be in here. But I think as an example, this thing should be good enough, because in here there have been some of these portraits. You could try to do it with these, but I can't recommend that. I mean, if I wouldn't have anything else than this, I would try it with these, but you will see in a second why these, at least for my opinion, are a little bit too small and not so very handy for this, especially if you have never done something like this. So what I thought was, if we don't have the Halloween sticker book, or perhaps we don't want to make them so Halloween-ish, yeah, then we can also take something else. This is also an ideology item, but you can also, I think, find other things like this in your stash. Use a photo which is rectangular as the first piece, because the heads here are all made from rectangular photos, even if you can't see that at first glance. That was also a question I got multiple times about these little creatures. Please take a look at this here. This is the frame of the photo. Can you see that? And here, this portion here is the background of the thing. So that is, let's say we had this here, then it's just this thing, and this black thing is this black thing here. So this is not a paper doll or something, it's just a rectangular photo. So you can use whichever photo you have. Instead of these, you could also consider using a digital. So for example, these, you can find these in my shop. These are not Halloween themed. There is a Halloween edition of this available, but on those photos, the heads of the people are also pretty small. So I would recommend to try it with this one. This is called Vintage Photo Strips. You can find that on today's Vaultober post. And there are a lot of images which would work pretty well. I'm just thinking. Originally, I thought I want to try it with like normal people, but let's take this clown. Oh my goodness, somehow I have the feeling I need this clown. And this is perhaps also a good example. This photo doesn't have a black frame. The color of the frame is irrelevant. Perhaps that was confusing when I said that a second ago, but I just wanted to point that out. You know, on the other photo it's black. I just wanted to make clear that it is not the head of a paper doll, nothing fuzzy cut or so, but it's just a rectangular photo, okay? So let's perhaps take this. Shall we take another one from here? You could also try to take a photo of yourself or so. That could also be a funny idea. And what I then also have are these. I've just taken them out from my drawer. These are my grandchildren, not my grandchildren, but the ephemera bag from my shop is called Grandchildren. You could consider printing these smaller so that you have a size like this. So what I'm trying to say is the photo doesn't necessarily have to be a rectangle. It can also be a square like this. Or you can, you know, if you have a bigger rectangle, just print it smaller so that it fits the other pieces you might have. She looks really, really cool. Okay, let's use her. So then we have 4. I think that should be enough. And then we need the next portion, which is something like a butterfly, a moth, or whatever you want to use for that. So there are obviously tons of options. I will go with moths today because that was, you know, what I used for this book here as well. But you can also use other animals, obviously. So what I used for the original characters was this here. These are the transparent moths by Ideology. Oh, this is perfection. Perfection. Oh my goodness, look at the colors. You can't see it because of my light. I'm so sorry. This one, I don't know if I like that so much because this is so small. Let's see if I have perhaps some of my own moths here, which could work. Why is here so much in this thing? As another layer. You can also take that printable, that is the moth and paper flutter printable from my shop, and print that to an overhead transparency. That could also obviously work. You could also think about something like a combination. In this case, I would take the ideology moth and put that on a bigger layer of the moth and paper flutter printable, because, you know, well, this is nice as well, but it's a little bit, you know, then the ideology moth is a little bit invisible. I like it better when it's like so, and this is then the background layer. Oh, okay, there you go. Can you see the difference? I mean, I don't say that this moth is ugly. Yeah, it's just not the right moth for this project. You could also think about something like this. Add another layer. That is absolutely cool. I find this green and this yellow, that fits really well. And this one, shall we perhaps give her a little bit of color as well, because the photo and the moth are pretty much like, you know, black and white. And then we need the legs, and you can see here that the legs are really not proportional to the rest. Yeah, and that is because those are legs from paper dolls. Yes. And yes, we now need to cut the legs off, and we will be left with the upper part of such a paper doll. But if you think, waste of paper dolls, listen, just use them for another page and make something like this. Here you can see I've used all of the upper parts where the legs are missing, because the legs are on the other creatures. Problem solved. Okay. That is perfection. Oh my goodness. That is funny, but I don't like it so extremely much. And I've also chosen those paper dolls where the legs are not covered by a dress or so, because I think that looks better. What about this? I think I like that. That's perfect. Okay, and you can see it doesn't take long to find these. To be honest, I'm just realizing that when I made the book, that was a whole different story. But you know, when you make something which will then go into the hands of Tim Holtz, then you freak your freak automatically. I think that is a normal body reaction somehow. That you then, yeah, I tend to overthink the things then, even if that is absolutely not necessary. But it is what it is, and it is what my brain does. But I'm just realizing that I could have saved a lot of time. So then, what I want to do then is, I take the head, I take this thing, and I put my glue, well, we can also do it here, then you can see it better. I put my glue here on the bottom of the photo, just here, that's totally enough. Then I take this and I position this thing, and now I'm realizing that my staple is a little bit too much in the air. I just flatten this a little bit with my hammer. So then, why is my camera not focusing? Then it looks like this. And since we are gluing transparency to paper, let's give that a little time to dry. And while that will dry, I can glue these together in exactly the same way. Put a little line of glue there and then just position the moth. Okay, so then this should be dry enough to go on. Then I take the girl and I determine how long the legs shall be. And obviously, depending on where you put them, this thing gets a whole different vibe somehow. We could make them pretty short, like so, or longer and even having the dress peeking out here. So then we can put glue on here. Even if drying time sometimes really sucks, it also gives us the possibility to make a fresh junk journal medicine. And it gives us the possibility to think about where we want to put these. Obviously here I've used the pages in my journal to put them. These are some of the file folders I've used. You can see here are these little page tab thingies, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a junk journal page where you put them. You could also put them on tags or journaling cards or whatever you like. So let's talk about some options. I was thinking we could just take some tags, but when I was thinking that, I had no idea how big these will turn out. So let's see if this would work. Yeah, it could work. Look here, this looks a little bit weird. I would probably cut this a little shorter or perhaps turn it into a card or so. I find the proportion of the tags, except for this one, not so great. But what we also could do is I still have some of the freebies here and also a page from my Poppyfield Avenue printable. Let's try if we can perhaps even make our lives a little easier by using a background which already exists. What about such a neutral background? I find if the background color is somehow in the rectangular photo, that makes sense, at least for me. And that means that this portion would be perfect. Here's the tiniest little bit of red, which is in the moth and also in her lips. And here, I don't know if you can see that in the photo, there's also a little bit of that red, or a similar red. But I think it's even cooler when it's like this. Then it has more weight here on the bottom. Do you agree when I say they all need something to stand on? For example, a piece like this, which color-wise fits to all of these. This is just a piece of paper which I have used to cut some leaves with some die cuts. And I would say this is, the perfect material to solve this little problem here, because we can just take this, glue this here. I think I've just glued it a little bit too high. Oh no. Yeah, well, but it's okay. I'm still pretty close to her eye there, but I think that looks way better than it was before, so I will quickly do that for the others as well. If something like this happens and, you know, you glue that paper accidentally in to the wrong spot, let's just do a quick little trick. Take some black paint, or whichever color you like. Do it like this. And since I like that and I want to have these cohesive, I will quickly do that on the others as well. I think on both of these we could also stamp a little bit in the background. What do you think? These are pretty, like, you know, finished backgrounds. I mean, you could obviously do something on those as well additionally, but I think it's not necessary to do that. And obviously with all of these backgrounds you could also additionally do the wildest things which could come to your mind. Emboss the stamp impression with embossing powder. Do some crazy mixed media techniques on the backgrounds. Throw this into your junk journal, which you already have, and create a background of your choice. You don't necessarily need a digital paper as a background. I just did this here so you know that it's a little easier for me, and I wanted to focus on these creatures and not necessarily on, no, not at all, on how to make a background for such a thing. But I think you can imagine, you can go really, really into any direction you can imagine with this. And in the journal I made, there I also have some, and why, I mean, why am I gluing these down already? It's not too late. Here I have some other elements in the background, like for example these little flowers here, but also some die cuts, which looks really interesting, I would say. Here, for example, there I have this, you know, this collage in the background, and then this die cut, which makes it even more dimensional. And I have absolutely no idea why I have glued this down already, because I have taken out some die cuts, which I wanted to include here. Can I mean, no. Well, let's see. Now we have to decide very, very, very fast what we want to use. I'm absolutely surprised. I find this absolutely cool. It's never too late to add some die cuts. It's already too wide. I just measured it. It's already too wide for a normal page. So that means this needs to go, and I want to do that now because I want that this looks finished and that I know exactly what I have here. And then I can put that in my stash, and later on I can use that for a project. And I don't have to struggle with the size of this, and this looks even cooler when it's when it's torn off. Okay. And then a really massive part of the character of this book here is this hair, which is, you can see, peeking out here. And I have also used that here for decorating these characters. And I quickly want to show you how I made this. This hair I got in a Happy Mail, which came right in the right moment. But I'm sure you can find something like that on Amazon. Just search for fake fur or something like that. Just cut a piece off here. And yet now you might think, this is way too much. Yes, but I like to have a bigger piece first and then cut that smaller and smaller and smaller, because for me it was really hard to imagine how big the hair can be and how the shape can be. And when you cut through this, you also lose some of this here. So that means if you cut it in a small, if you cut only a small piece, it could in the end be that it is too small. So what I did was, I have taken this, and you can see this is different in color, but here it already looks like hair. I mean, everything looks like hair, Louise. Like a hairstyle somehow. So that we could imagine to style this like so. And when I see that, I can just cut the rest off. This would be totally enough for a second one, obviously. And now, when I look at this, the first thing I can see is that this portion here, when I hold it like so, is visible here. And I want to avoid that. So I take this and don't cut this off, yeah, because then it's gone. When we have that, we also need something which is a little bit round here, like so, so that we don't cover up too much of her forehead. And then for this little bone you've seen on the other picture, I've used the Ideology bones, which are these, available in different sizes. I have grunged the bones up a little bit just by adding the tiniest little bit of acrylic paint on them. You could, grunge them up with different mediums. Do it like this, and then it looks absolutely Halloween-ish and grungy. Perhaps like this. So then, and that is, I would say, the most difficult part of the whole thing. I want to put my glue on here, enough to make it stick, but not too much, because if we have this on the fur, and visible on the fur, we will always see that later, and I want to avoid that, obviously. So I'm trying to press it down. I don't move it around anymore. I put a little bit of my glue here, and then try to get this over here. It's perhaps, is this too high? It is a little bit too high, but that's no problem. If something is too high, just put a button on it. I'm so sorry. That was a weird joke. This is too wide, isn't it? I already can hear her. I already can hear her. What what do I have to do? You know, I know this one special person. We talk a lot about junk journaling. You know, we are really good friends. She's, to be honest, she's my best friend. And I often, nearly always, show her my projects before you see them. Because, you know, we are talking about crafting and so on. And there are always these things where she then says, you know, after I have made the Instagram photos, after I have made my thumbnail, you know, I do all of the work and then I show her what I did and what I created. And then she says, yeah, I really like that, but I would put a little bit of grunge to the button, it's too wide. And when I saw the button here, I could already hear her saying that. And, you know, I learn slowly, but I learn. So this is not so wide anymore. Okay, so here I'm back. For the backing, I've just used some black watercolor paper. I also went around this with my sewing machine, which is obviously optional. But I think that gives it a nice addition. And speaking about addition, what do we think about some splatters? Perfect. She couldn't remember. Then I found I was half dreaming. This fits perfectly. And I think it could look really cool when there's a second sentence. Oh, okay. Again came the ghostly laughter. And let's put that here. Oh, without falling off from the chair while trying to bring this parallel to the frame. Okay, so here we go. If you want to see some close-up photos of these, please check out today's Vaultober post. The link to the Vaultober calendar is down below in the description box. And there you can also find another little surprise today, which is another discount, you know. And if you want to use the same printables here for the backgrounds, then check out the other Vaultober doors if you haven't done that yet, because you can find those papers there for free. Why is here no quote? I'm really hoping you could find some inspiration in this video, and if you want to know which quote I will use for him, then check out the post, okay? See you the next time. Have a very great and creative day, and happy Halloween. Bye!